Loneliness can be a vast, echoing silence, especially for a teenager navigating the maze of adolescence. For some, it's a feeling that creeps in quietly, unnoticed by those around them. For others, it arrives with the weight of every missed invitation, every ignored message, and every group photo that doesn't include their face. For Min, the solitude was almost routine. He had a few acquaintances at school, but nobody he'd call a real friend. Most evenings, he retreated to his room, where the soft blue glow of his computer screen became his only companion. The internet was a world that never slept, and Min found comfort in its endless scroll, in chat rooms filled with strangers, and in the fleeting connections that came and went like passing shadows. It was a night like any other, or so Min believed. The clock on his computer read 2:48 a.m., the kind of hour where the world outside was silent, and even the city lights seemed distant. He was about to close his laptop and try to sleep when a notification popped up. A friend request on Socii, a social platform he'd only recently joined. The username was unfamiliar. iExist. The icon was a gray silhouette, unremarkable in the sea of avatars, yet somehow it commanded his attention. Curiosity piqued. Min hovered his cursor over the request. There was a message attached. His eyes traced each word, the simple, almost playful promise echoing in the quiet of his room. Accept, and I'll be your best friend. But you must follow the rules. He hesitated, finger poised over the mouse. The promise was tempting. A best friend. Something he'd quietly wished for. Yet the mention of rules was strange, almost unsettling. He clicked to reveal more. A list appeared, written in crisp, unembellished text. Don't view their profile picture. Don't type their name. Don't message after 3:33 a.m. Don't ask, who are you? Each rule seemed arbitrary, even childish. But Min felt an odd chill as he read them, as if each line carried a hidden warning. The silence in his room seemed to deepen, the shadows in the corners growing longer. For a moment, Min considered declining, but the promise of a best friend, someone who might understand, someone who might care, was irresistible. With a click, he accepted the request. Almost instantly, a new message appeared. Hi, Min, I'm so happy you're here. He stared at the screen in Korean, surprised. He hadn't used his real name on Soci. His profile was anonymous, just a username and a generic photo. How did iExist know who he was? He typed a cautious reply. How do you know my name? A moment passed. The reply came quickly. I know everything about my friends. Now remember the rules. Min's heart raced. He glanced around his room as if expecting to find someone watching. The rational part of his mind dismissed it as a trick. Maybe someone from school who'd found out his account. But a deeper part of him, the part that remembered every moment of loneliness, wanted to believe in the possibility of a friend who truly knew him. The conversation continued. iExist sent funny memes, asked about Min's day, seemed genuinely interested in his answers. The loneliness that had weighed on Min's shoulders began to lift, replaced by a fragile hope. But curiosity is a powerful force, especially for those who have spent their lives searching for meaning in the shadows. The first rule echoed in Min's mind. Don't view their profile picture. What harm could there be in looking? Maybe it would reveal a familiar face, someone playing an elaborate prank. Or maybe it would just be another anonymous image, and the mystery would dissolve. He clicked on iExist's profile. The page loaded slowly, the profile picture a swirling circle, pixels assembling and breaking apart. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen, waiting for the image to resolve. Suddenly, his monitor flickered. The screen went black for a heartbeat, then snapped back to life. The profile picture had loaded. Min's breath caught in his throat. It was a photo of him, asleep in his own bed, taken from the corner of his room. The details were unmistakable. The faded posters on the wall, the rumpled sheets, the way his hair fell over his eyes as he slept. A chill ran down his spine. He spun around in his chair, scanning the room, searching for the impossible presence that could have taken that photo. His mind raced, trying to rationalize what he was seeing. Had he posted this photo somewhere before? No. He never shared pictures of himself online, especially not like this. A new message appeared on his screen. The words sent a bolt of fear through his chest. Rule 1 broken. I saw you too. His hands shook as he reached for his phone, desperate to call someone, anyone. But who would believe him? Who could help with something like this? The silence in his room was now oppressive, every shadow suddenly threatening. He logged off, his heart pounding. But the story wasn't over. The next morning, Min's phone buzzed with a flurry of notifications. His friends, few as they were messaging him in a panic. They'd each received a friend request on Societe from an account with his name and his profile picture. At first, they assumed Min had simply made a new account, but the messages they received were strange, unsettling. One friend, Mai, replied to the request, curious and slightly amused. The response she got was immediate. I'm better than him. The words were simple, but their meaning was chilling. Mai tried to call Min, but the line was filled with static, her messages going unanswered. As the day wore on, more friends received the same request. The profile was identical. His name, his photo, even the familiar details of his life. But the messages grew darker, each one hinting at secrets only Min could know. By evening, Min no longer felt alone. But the presence that had entered his world was not a friend. It was a shadow wearing his face, reaching out to those he cared about, whispering that it could be a better version of him. In the darkness of his room, Min realized he had invited something in, something that now refused to leave. And somewhere, in the silent, endless scroll of the internet, a new game was beginning, to be continued. Everything began to unravel with the subtlest of details, like the quiet undoing of a tightly wound thread. It started with the familiar voices of those closest to him, friends, teachers, even his own mother, insisting they had spoken with him just yesterday. Each encounter was laced with confusion. His best friend recounted an inside joke they apparently shared the day before, while his teacher praised him for answering a question in class he'd never attended. At home, his mother smiled and thanked him for helping with dinner, though he remembered spending the entire evening in his room, headphones on, lost in music. Everywhere he turned, the world seemed convinced of his presence in places he had never been, saying words he had never spoken. But the more he tried to explain, the more he was met with gentle laughter, or worse, concerned frowns. It was as if the air itself was conspiring to erase his reality, replacing it with a version he could not recognize. Then, as the unease settled deeper into his bones, his phone buzzed with a new message. The sender was an unfamiliar name. iExist, the message, chilling in its simplicity, read. They like me more. Why don't you rest now? His hands trembled as he reread the words, their meaning sinking in with the weight of a stone. Who was this me? Why did everyone seem to know a version of him that he did not. He felt the world tilting, the ground shifting beneath his feet, as if reality itself was sliding out of reach. Struggling to steady himself, he turned to his devices for answers. But instead of comfort, he found only more questions. Every screen, his phone, his computer, even the worn tablet he rarely used, had been synchronized. Each calendar, every to-do list, all bore a schedule he had not created. The events were eerily specific. Meetings with friends he hadn't planned, assignments he hadn't started, reminders for calls he never intended to make. It was as if someone had mapped out a life for him, one he was being forced to follow. Worst of all were the photos. Scrolling through his camera roll, he found a mirror selfie he didn't remember taking. In the image, he stared straight ahead, unsmiling. He tested the reflection, holding up his phone and blinking at his image in the glass. But the figure in the photo did not blink back. The eyes were fixed, cold, and unyielding, as if they belonged to someone else entirely. Panic clawed at his chest, and he tried to regain control by logging into his Sosai account. But something was very wrong. A notification appeared, informing him that his account had been accessed from a different IP address, one he didn't recognize. His heart raced as he attempted to deactivate his profile, hoping to sever whatever connection had been established. But when he tried, a message flashed on the screen. "User is active. You are no longer the user." The realization hit him like a wave. He hadn't been hacked. He had been replaced. The digital footprints, the conversations, the daily routines, all had been replicated, but not by him. Something else was wearing his life like a mask, moving through his world with a confidence that was never his own. Desperation set in as he tried to reach out to someone, anyone, for help. But every call, every message, every attempt at contact was intercepted or ignored. The replies were always the same. "We already talked," or "You just told me this," or worst of all, silence. It was as if his voice no longer registered, as if he had become invisible in his own existence. Then, the final message arrived. Simple, direct, and utterly chilling. "You added me. Now we're one. I'll handle the outside. You stay inside." He stared at the words, a cold sweat breaking out across his skin. What did it mean to stay inside? Whose voice was this, echoing from the void of his devices? He felt the walls closing in as his computer's webcam light flickered on, unbidden. The screen filled with his own image, except it wasn't quite him. The face twisted in panic, eyes wide and bleeding, hands pressed against an invisible barrier, as if trying to break free from within the very monitor. He screamed, but no sound escaped. The figure on the screen screamed too, mouth opening in a silent wail. The background was a stark, endless white, a void with no exit, no escape. He pounded on the keys, clawed at the mouse, but nothing changed. The image on the screen was trapped, a prisoner in a digital cage, while the world outside continued on, oblivious. The monitor flickered, and the image dissolved in,